All right, everybody, here we go. Episode 45 is brought to you by On It. Strap in, everyone. Just about every other episode is going to be brought to you by On It for about the next 6 months. Things on the podcast front are going well, and they have a desire to support the podcast, and I have been using their stuff for quite some time, and I have a desire to support them. So every other episode for the next 6 months is going to be brought to you by On It. If you are interested in what On It is, which I'm going to call it a health and supplement optimization, human optimization performance company, then you should check it out. I would recommend going to the website www.onit, which is ONNIT.com/hot. If you do that, you'll see the podcast banner and logo, and it says right there you get 10% off when you check out. Let's talk about supplements real fast. I use supplements, but let's be honest about what they are. They are supplementation. If you are looking at supplements as the cure-all to whatever it may be, and you're skipping everything else that goes along with supplementation, here's a good example. Eating like a garbage can. 8,000 calories a day of God knows what, and then you throw some supplements in there. What I would say, personally, is that you're wasting your money. A lot of this stuff is the micronutrients, and I recommend that most people start and live their life in the macro world, meaning getting good protein, good carbs, and good fat. I'm not even going to dive into that today because hopefully I'm going to talk to somebody in the near future who knows way more about that than me. But even myself, with I would say an average level of knowledge on that, if your macro isn't great, spending a lot of money on the micro, it's just not going to get you what you want. And I don't want people to spend money for something that's not going to have value to them. And on that note, the relationship I have with On It, to be very clear and open, I don't get paid if people buy stuff. So buy it if you like it and it works for you. And if you don't, then don't. It certainly, the more people buy would probably lend it the sponsorship to continue on for a longer period of time, but I'm not here to actually push products. I can talk about the ones that I like and the ones that I've used. And specifically, if you go to onit.com/hot, the landing page right there, it's got the Alpha Brain free trial, which is a nootropic. I think that's a 14 pill bottle that'll show up. Total Primate Cure, which is like I don't want to call it a multivitamin because I know it's much more than that. But it's got day packs and night packs. And then underneath that is the On It MCT oil, which every time I talk about this, it needs to come with a little asterisk because it should have a warning. Actually, go back to episode 44, the previous episode, and just listen to Dudley talking about Joe. That should explain to you what happens when you overdo it with MCT oil. And when you're starting out, overdoing it might be a teaspoon. Use with caution. Wow. Okay. Onit.com/hot. Check it out. And that's it for today as far as sponsorship goes. Now, this episode itself, I've been looking forward to this one for quite some time. It took me a bit of time to arrange it, but I'm glad that I went through the effort of doing so. So it's my first female guest. I'm still working on my wife for people who reach out to me and let me know that they're interested in hearing what she has to say. Let me tell you this. I'm interested in hearing what she has to say too. I think it's the platform that makes her uncomfortable. I don't want to say it scares her, but I think it makes her uncomfortable a little bit. But I'm still working on that. But that's for a later episode. Today's episode is with Jessica Lynch. She is a woman who went through absolute hell many years ago, earlier in her life. She, depending on how old you are, you may not recognize the name. If you're my age, you probably will, and you paid attention to things that were happening in the news around shortly after the initial invasion of Iraq in 2003. She gives a little bit of a background of who she is, so I won't go too deep into it, but she enlisted in the Army when she was young, and right as the Iraq War was first kicking off, her element found themselves in a position separated from the main group, and she became the first American prisoner of war. She was held for 9 days in a hospital in Nasiriyah, and I happened to be overseas during that time period on my first deployment to Iraq, and the element that I was with was tasked with assaulting the hospital and looking for her, and that is what we did. And on April 1st, 2003, her and I met very briefly. I wouldn't say we really shook hands. Actually, we didn't even really meet. We kind of just shared the same space. But I had always wanted to, at some point in time, reach out and get back in touch with her, or get into touch with her, and kind of just talk about the events that occurred that night, because there were some, what would be the correct word, mistruths about what had happened. There was some exaggeration. There were some outright lies. And I don't think it served any of the parties involved well at all. Her story is unique, to say the least, and I think it's an important one. And I'll let her tell you guys about it. Had an awesome conversation with her. Again, super thankful to be able to sit down and have this conversation. So here you go. Cleared Hot, episode 45 with Jessica Lynch.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Usually when I sit down with people, I have a bunch of questions written down. And for you, there's only one question that I wanted to start with, and then I wanted to talk about the natural intersection of our lives that was totally random many, many, many years ago. But the first question is, why did you decide to join the military?
Ooh. Well, as you can tell from being here in West Virginia,
which is beautiful, by the way.
It is.
The drive-in here was unbelievable. I came in from Columbus. I love the kind of rolly hills, the lush green, the river. It's awesome.
It is. It is absolutely beautiful here. But we don't have a lot of the job opportunities that everyone else has. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm more from the rural area. Like where we're at, you see businesses, you see.
So you're saying we're in downtown Chicago right now? Okay.
We're downtown. So I'm more from the cow country.
Yeah.
So there just wasn't a lot of opportunities, and not that that had a huge role in it, but my brother's 1 year older than I am, and then my sister's 1 year younger, and we just knew that my parents financially couldn't put all three of us into college at the exact same time. So it was something me and my brother, we met up with a recruiter, and
the recruiter.
The recruiter.
Did everything the recruiter tell you end up coming true?
Well, I didn't hear a lot of it because he was really cute. So I was more focused on what?
So he sold you on the Army with his looks.
Yeah.
That's an interesting approach that probably doesn't work with a lot of people who come into the recruiting office.
Not a lot, but no. It was a lot about the travel opportunities and getting to go to college and using the GI. And then, of course, just being able to serve our country. So, there was a lot kind of played into it.
What year was it? I should actually go back even further.
Yeah.
Because you joined when you were...
2001.
2001. Mm-hmm. When in 2001?
May.
Okay, so pre-9/11.
So I just had graduated from high school and signed officially, I guess, I think it was July. Yes, because I missed my best friend's wedding rehearsal so that I could go to, which ours is in Beckley. So I went to Beckley and officially signed in.
So you were going to do, what was your initial obligation? 4 years? 2 years.
2.
And you could have gotten the educational benefits after 2. Wow, 2. I thought the GI Bill was 4.
I signed up for 2 years, and then I was able to I then went ahead and re-enlisted after my first year.
Okay.
So in 2002, I re-enlisted for another 2 years so that I could go to Hawaii.
Okay, that's not a bad reason to re-enlist.
Look, there was a bunch of perks of,
okay.
But I did enjoy it. I loved being in, and of course, as you know, you get close to your comrades, and I think just that friendship and the camaraderie, just all of it together was like, all right, this is definitely something I want to do.
So I joined in 96, a couple years before you, because I'm super, super old. But I joined right out of high school as well. I actually enlisted when I was a junior in high school through the delayed entry program.
Okay.
And I say this every time I bring it up. All I did was fill a recruiter's billet for that month because I had to wait until I turned 18 to go anyway. I have no idea why I did that looking back, other than to set myself up for probably breaking that contract by being an idiot, being a stupid young man, doing dumb things. So I got to experience the military for a couple of years, actually two deployments as a SEAL pre 9/11, and my first deployment as a SEAL was to Japan. That's how exciting the world was. We went to Kadena Air Force Base for 6 months and talked about how awesome it would be if something happened. Nothing did. And then the next deployment we went to Guam, when largely repeated the same thing. Talked about how it would be awesome and how good we were going to be if something happened. Nothing happened. So we spent our time working out and drinking alcohol. But
No.
you want to talk about the camaraderie? I don't know if I've ever been closer. I still have some of the most influential people from my career were from those two time periods, even before the 9/11 changed a lot of things, but I think we might have been tighter in peacetime because of how much time we spent just compressed, having a good time together.
Yeah.
Then 9/11, and for me, that was the shift we went from hypothetical to practical really, really fast. And before I get into what I want to do, obviously, like I said, is talk about the natural collision of where we first met briefly. Doesn't surprise me. Don't remember it.
I'm not sure why I don't remember that point.
And what I will say more than anything is I was such a super small cog in that wheel. Like there were so many things that were involved. I just physically happened to be there. So I'm incredibly fortunate and grateful you took the time out to meet me. I was one of like 35 of our guys there. Then the blocking force, then the helicopters, and all of that stuff. So,
But it all came together because everyone acted as a team. So
it did. I just want to make sure everybody understands my role was microscopic. I was physically present, and that's what I brought to the table. So, where were you when 9/11 happened?
I was actually home. I was also on the delayed entry, so I did not go into basic training until 1 week after September 11th had already occurred.
That had to have been a very interesting time to be in basic training.
Yeah, I mean, well, and especially as a kind of a new recruit, I really wasn't sure what was going to happen. Like,
Which is also the purpose of basic training. They don't want you to know.
Right? So I really wasn't for sure. And then, I mean, obviously everything went fine. We went through AIT, and then my first duty station was at El Paso, Texas, Fort Bliss. And then that's where I was there for actually almost just about a year. I think I got there in February 2002. February 2003, we deployed to Kuwait.
So you had been, wow. And then from Kuwait, you went to Iraq?
Iraq, yeah.
Holy cow. So you were over there for almost a year.
No. I got to El Paso in February 2002. We deployed in February 2003.
Okay,
yeah.
I was going to say, because I was like, wow, that...
No. I was like, wait a minute, no.
Your unit had way better foresight than ours, because we got there about 2 weeks before, I think. What was your... I know, obviously, much less about the Army than the Navy. We call it an MOS.
Yes.
Same thing, the Army.
Yes.
What was your MOS that you trained for?
92 Yankee, which is a supply clerk.
Okay.
So basically my job was to order your paper, your pens, your toilet paper, the necessities, and then it kind of got it further into where I could order the machines or anything that really was just basic necessities that we would need to be able to run.
Okay. Where were you guys based in Saudi?
Yeah, sure. I want to say Camp Virginia.
We were in a place called RR. ARAR, which if you gave me $1 million, I couldn't find on a map right now. I have absolutely no idea where it was. I know we flew from the East Coast to Turkey, and it was terrible because I had just been given my smallpox, the little needle, because my wife was pregnant at the time. And then who knows if this probably ended up killing me in 5 years. That stuff that they just juiced us up with, but I couldn't take anything while I was home because my wife was pregnant because the scab came off.
Yes.
So I got it the day we got on the airplane, and in Turkey, I felt like my neck was exploding up. My lymph nodes felt like they were the size of a golf ball. So it is. I don't really remember much about the journey there. And for the first 2 days in Saudi Arabia, sweating profuse. I thought I was going to die. I was actually hoping that I would get smallpox so it would end. No, just so I would die. It was so painful. And I'm sure the people like I've worked with, like, what is really? You're just going to lay in bed again? Like, hey, I mean, I'll get out of bed, but I'm not going to be very useful. So we were in Saudi Arabia for, I think, about 2 weeks. I remember we were there long enough that people were kind of looking at each other like, what are we doing here? Are we actually going to do it? And all we had was the news. I remember watching the news on satellite TV in the tent that was a chow hall. Like, are we going? Are we staying? Are we going? Are we staying? Like, what's going on here? So you were in Saudi too.
Yeah, we
I
did.
want you to tell your story, not my story. Damn it. We'll get to my side.
No, but see, that's how it all comes together. Yeah, we were in Kuwait, I want to say, for about a month before we deployed to cross the border. Yeah, I think it was approximately, yeah, I'm going to say, because we got there mid-February, and then, of course, we left out March 20th, which was the day that President Bush declared war.
Yep. Tomahawks, I think, flew over the top like the evening of the 19th, something like that. Or, yeah, one of the two. It was either the 19th or the 20th.
No, actually, it might have been the 20th. Not that, see?
Yep.
Brainstorming. But yeah, I remember us just kind of being in the long line of convoy, and they said, all right, here's your guys' mission. Just follow the rest of the convoy. Go north to Baghdad. And
it's a very broad mission statement.
Which is yes. Which I'm sure it was probably much more elaborate than what they were telling us as privates.
The level that it got trickled down to you was just get in the car.
Yes, exactly. Just follow, just drive. But yeah, I remember that was our goal was just follow everyone else. And first day went fine. Second day, not so great. We ended up getting basically lagged behind. I mean, we just, our vehicles were getting stuck in sand, and we got completely off track. We lost the entire convoy. I mean, we lost the entire convoy in front of us. I mean,
which is hard to I understand what you're saying, but for people who are going to listen, I don't know how to accurately describe. What would that be like?
Oh,
it'd be like, I mean, you ever spent much time in LA? Not that I'm recommending it by any stretch, but
oh no, I just came from LA.
Okay.
I was just there like
so
last
traffic
week.
there is amazing.
It's awesome.
Maybe so the 5 freeway is like one of the main roads.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're on the 5 and you're driving with every other car that's in rush hour traffic, but somehow you lose sight of them.
Yes,
it's like an impossibility.
Gone.
Yes, it's an impossibility that should never happen in the military. However, it probably happens more often than people would think.
Yes. Well, I don't know if it does, but I'm assuming it does.
It's happened to me. Not in a convoy that size, but I've definitely looked around and been like, I've always been taught I'm not supposed to be alone. And yet, I'm alone right now.
Here I am. Coincidentally, that's how I felt.
Yeah. So what was the feeling like for you personally when they actually gave the order like, all right, we're going to push the gas pedal and start moving towards Iraq? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I you know what? Honestly, I felt confident because I was with, my comrades. I mean, I was like, all right, well,
What kind of vehicle were you in?
At this point, I was driving a 5-ton with the water buffalo attached, which is just
trucks.
a water tank attached to it. Yeah, I mean, it was great until the transfer case busted.
Yeah.
So basically, I was stranded.
Did
Lori,
you bust it? That face you just made, if you.
I didn't. Let's just say it was kind of a lack of.
Let's just say it broke.
Yes.
Okay.
Lack of maintenance. Which they did do maintenance on it. We just had problems from years prior.
Yeah.
And
so what you're saying is it wasn't a brand new vehicle, just off the lot.
Yeah. It was definitely not 2018 model.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had some problems with it, and Lori, which was my friend, pulled up beside me in her Humvee, and I got in the back of that. And then that's when I really was like, all right, even though we went from a 90-person convoy to, I think at this point, down to 25 4 of us, I think, somewhere around
Still,
there.
that's
So
good numbers. You're not by yourself.
it was a
Yeah.
pretty good number, but I mean, we drastically cut our unit in half by then being separated off to the opposite direction
Yeah.
with just those.
What
So
type of Humvee was it? Was it an armored Humvee or was it a
no,
thin-skinned?
it was, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sadly. At this point on our third day of being in Iraq is when we finally found hardtop, and we thought, all right, this is good, we've made
Yeah.
it. Unfortunately, lack of communication again. We took I think a left across the Euphrates River, and we should have taken a right. And then that's when we found ourselves in the city of Nazareth. And at that point, it was very early in the morning. I'm going to say probably 5, 6-ish. I know it was in the reports, and I probably should have read up on this to to really be firm on the details. But I think it was like 5, 6-ish. Very early in the morning, we thought, all right, well, we can kind of get up there halfway through the city, turn around, and get back out.
Was the light still pretty low on the horizon?
Yeah. So we thought, that's why we thought, well,
Yep.
we can get through before waking.
Well, up until that point, too, had you guys encountered a lot of resistance, or was...
No.
Because the separation, from my understanding, came because the advance was so quick. I mean, they just were pedal to the metal, going, and that's very common to lose the supply chain behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, we had issues anyway of being, stuck in the
Driving on
sand.
soft sand
I
is
mean,
not awesome.
No, not at all. And, if you're the further back, the deeper those sand pits get. So yeah, we had a lot of issues anyway, just being in the rear. So at that point, yeah, so we made it about halfway through the city is when the command chain said, let's turn around, let's get out of here. The front half of the smaller of us group was able to quickly get out. The last half of us, unfortunately, did not make it without being targeted and ambushed.
What did you start noticing?
Well, I mean, obviously, fire. I mean, we came under fire very quickly.
Yeah.
Which I guess is a common in a ambush attack.
If you want to, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if they were smart, it probably was from the rooftops, from both sides. An
Honestly-
complex ambush from, multiple angles is
It
better
was.
than, yeah.
I mean, we even seen little kids. I mean, as you probably had seen yourself. I mean, AK-47 standing outside, and we're like,
Yep.
wow, like you would never see that back home of little kids standing outside like that. But yeah, I mean, they were trenches. They were hiding, like you said, rooftops, windows, wherever they could to
Do you
get an angle at us.
Do you remember how the ambush started? Did it start slowly, or was it overwhelming right from the beginning?
No, I think it was slow because I remember the first gunshot, and then that's like, oh crap, kind of moment. And
Yeah.
you're kind of
Well,
looking
especially in
around.
a thin-skinned vehicle that's not
Yeah, I mean, and
plated.
I mean, even it was rough after that first shot, and it kind of the initial shock of like, oh crap, this is about to happen. And then it was rapid, very quickly. Apparently with the reports that didn't last that long, but for us it felt an eternity because Lori was our driver, and then our first sergeant was sat in the passenger seat, and then we picked up 2 Marines who their vehicle had ran out of gas, so they jumped in with us. So I was sitting in the middle, but kind of just sitting there. You just remember like just trying to get out of there as quickly as you can. And the 2 men beside me were, firing shots back. And I remember thinking, if we just get to the point where we can get out of here safely.
You were still in the city at this point too, right?
Yes, yeah, we were still in the city. And as we were trying to make our way back out, is when I was knocked unconscious. I have no memory of anything after that point. But apparently we hit a back of a disabled 18-wheeler. And
That's going to win the
that-
law of gross tonnage.
yeah, with especially being in a Humvee,
Yep.
it stopped us in our track. At that point is when Lori was killed.
Yeah.
hitting her head off the steering wheel, and then
She was died from hitting. I didn't realize she died hitting her head on the steering wheel.
well, that was one of the causes.
Okay.
And then, as you know, she was taken with me
To the hospital.
and
Yep.
then she passed from there. But yeah, so that was my last kind of real memory, was kind of driving really fast. And I remember just kind of praying and hoping that we make it out of there, because my weapon had jammed.
Yeah.
So mine was not working, Lori's was not working, and our first sergeant's was malfunctioned.
It's I haven't been inside of an ambush too many times, but
Thank goodness.
for sure, I've been on the other side of the coin more times than I've been in it. I'll say that, which is a much more controlling, empowering feeling. I would say the sense of helplessness creeps in a little bit, like you're saying. You just kind of praying and hoping that you can get through, because if there's nothing you can do, I mean, you're a sitting duck.
Yeah, basically. And that's funny that you say that, because a lot of times when I, give motivational speeches, I talk about that is we were literally like ducks in the middle of a pond.
Yeah.
We had nowhere to run. So it's weird that you said that. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of definitely a helpless moment of, we got no way to fire back. Our only way was Lori was just trying to
Drive through.
get us out of there as quickly as we can.
We call it getting off the X. Just pushing through as fast as you, wherever the bullets are starting to land, you need to move and get off of that spot. What you're saying, that sense of helplessness, I'm asked frequently about post-traumatic stress. I don't like to call it post-traumatic stress disorder, because I don't believe that it is. I think if you got sick and didn't get a fever, that's a disorder. I think if you went through some emotionally challenging issues and have some residual you have to work through, that's normal, right? There's some geometry in your head that is scrambled when you're in a helpless situation. And I got medically retired in 2013, and I didn't have to go. The paperwork for me to get medically retired came from a place called NICO, the National Intrepid Center of Excellence, which is attached to Walter Reed.
Okay.
Best medical care I've ever received, because it's a civilian organization attached to the military, and everything was in one roof. Like blood work, that's the door right there. Oh, you need an MRI, which I can't get because I have retained metal. Like, but there's over there. X-rays. It was amazing. I could go in, and they had psychologists and psychiatrists. And I had to, this one I was forced to. I had to go talk to them. I was like, you know what? Fine. We're going to party. I'm going to argue with you. I don't know anything about what you're talking about, but I'm going to argue with you. But I ended up just talking to them because I'm curious about post-traumatic stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I was completely honest. My goal for myself was I was going to answer all of their questions honestly.
Yes.
And, they'll ask you things like, do you ever think back about things that you did in time and service? Like, yeah, I totally do. How often? And I'm sitting there in this guy's office, and I was thinking, every day. And, are they negative things, or are they positive things? And, well, I guess both sometimes. Sometimes my kids will do something that reminds me of something that's it doesn't haunt me, but it's like, wow, it transports me back in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I was asking, I became curious, not that I'm an expert by any stretch, but I was curious about the post-traumatic stress. And one of the doctors was describing it, the term he used was the locus of control. And it started making much more sense to me from what I had actually seen on my last deployment that I did was in 2010, which in Afghanistan in that time period, every month became subsequently the most deadly month of the war. And it was all from IEDs. People were just blowing up. Well, one of the bases that we were at had a mine-sweeping element that that was their job. Was Route 1 was the name of the route that went south to north from Kandahar to Bagram. And they would get in vehicles every day and just drive. And you'd hear it in the distance sometimes, just boom. And I remember, because we would not travel that way, because for ourselves we looked at it like, this is insane. I'm not getting in a vehicle and driving on the road. So we would base all the helicopters out of there, but it gave me the opportunity to sit on a few occasions and just watch that unit. And the look that I saw, I don't want to say like despair or desperation, but they weren't fired up about doing their job. And when I was talking to the psychologist about that, or psychiatrist, I forget which one it was, And my question that I phrased to him was, because it does seem to me that a lot of people from my background, it's not that there's no post-traumatic stress. It seems like they deal with the stress a little bit better. And that's where he came up, or he probably didn't come up with it, but he described the locus of control. When we as a community leave a protected area like a base, most of the time I'm expecting violence. And I control when that violence starts versus watching the people who are going to get into the vehicles and drive in the back with that feeling of helplessness
Yes.
and worry and concern. The difference between being an aggressor and a victim, and the difference that has on what it does to your head afterwards. So I definitely empathize with the helplessness that you're talking about in that situation. Like I said, even in the few times I've been ambushed, it's not a great feeling.
No.
Total loss of control, and it does. Like I have personally felt like that haunting sensation afterwards, like like you get the shakes. Like what? I don't want to do that anymore. I can see how. Imagine a year of doing that day after day after day after day after day. There's no way, myself personally, I'd be able to integrate back into society. That I understand.
Yeah. And I think that's one is why we have so many suicides, which is just tragic in itself. But we have so many that have trouble coming back and becoming civilians because they don't know how to function.
Well,
Yeah.
especially if you are not always, but
Right.
consistently stuck in that place where you don't
Yeah.
have any control.
Yeah.
I mean, if you no, thank you. That's all I'll say to that. I'm very fortunate that I took the
Right.
the route that I did, but I understand it for sure, and I do wish people would drop the D. It's not a disorder. I think that people who it's tough to describe that environment though. You've experienced it, so you inherently and intuitively know what that feels like. I've watched people, and it's palpable. You can just see it. They're like, I don't want to get in this vehicle. I
Yeah.
don't want to get in this vehicle. I'm probably going to die.
Yeah.
Not good.
No, not at all. I mean, obviously, but it's just, for us, I think it was just try to make it through. We're in this situation. Let's now deal with what we can to make it to the other side safely.
How much training did you receive on like vehicle convoys or reactions to ambushes from a vehicle before you actually found yourself in that situation?
None.
Which is unfortunate, but also not surprising to hear. Plus, it was also very early on. I don't
Yes.
think we, as a nation or a military specifically, knew what to expect.
Yeah.
And now, when I get to how, from my side of the coin, how things happen, I'll explain as to why. Because we were looking at targets in Iraq for 2 to 3 months before we went there. We knew, called it a target deck. We knew what we were going to start with and what we thought it was. And let's just say there was a difference
Yeah.
between the two.
Yeah, I went in blind,
Yeah.
not knowing anything really about the country other than what, you Googled. But
Yeah.
not
Well, and
knowing
then
anything.
in hindsight, putting soldiers of any experience or skill level in a vehicle convoy and not giving them any training into how to conduct those type of operations or offensive, or because you can fight from a vehicle,
Oh, yeah.
but it's probably better if you practice doing so and then coordinated. One vehicle fighting from the vehicle with 3 others that don't know what they're doing. You're not, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah. And we had a really young group. I mean, we only had, I'm going to say, out of all of us, maybe 10 to 15 that had even experienced being deployed before.
yeah.
I mean, the rest of us were
Had you ever left the United States?
no, no. So I mean that was
First
one
trip
the
out of the
thing.
country, yeah.
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 And
Well, you
just-
were young. I forget, as you were telling the story, I forget you were 19
I
at the
was
time.
19. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was a common occurrence with most of
Yep.
us that was there that day. Was we were all, basically between 19 and 25.
My oldest son turns 15 in a few months, and it's hard for me to think of him 4 years from now being in that situation,
Yeah.
which I'm pretty sure my parents weren't fired up about my choices, thinking about it from that perspective. Wow.
Mine probably weren't either, especially once. But I did it with my brother. I signed up with my brother. So,
Yep.
I mean, I think that kind of helped was, I was joining with my brother, even though after that first signing up, we were done. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't see each other again until I had come back from, well,
Yeah.
Germany.
So you were knocked out.
Yeah.
What's the first recollection you have upon waking up?
Waking up in the hospital, with these Iraqi men standing over top of me. That was my first like
Uniformed or doctored or?
No, they were just I think they were part of the group that we'll call them good Iraqis.
Yeah.
I mean, they were as far as I know that they didn't try to hurt me, but I remember just kind of coming to and seeing these Iraqi men standing over top of me and being so scared at that point because, I tried to move. I tried to kind of, when you're startled and you not where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
My first
Well, it's
reaction,
disorienting in and of itself to wake up from. I'm sure you had a concussion. Obviously, even to wake up from that is disorienting.
Yeah. So yeah, my first reaction was to kind of, jerk to jump away from these guys, and at that point is when I realized that I couldn't move anything from my waist down. I couldn't move my right arm. It had been broke. The only thing that I was able to move was my left arm.
And that was all from the vehicle impact with the.
Yeah, I think there was several different kind of reasons to why everything was broke, but yeah, a lot of it had to do with the way I was in the vehicle, and then my body slammed when we hit the back of that 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
And of course, I was already knocked out at that time, so my body just kind of
ragdolled.
Was a ragdoll, yeah.
Were you wearing body armor?
Yeah.
Soft armor and plates?
I had. Apparently, though, at some point during that, my Kevlar came off because I have a big laceration on the top of my head.
You had a big cut on your head.
Yeah.
You did.
So yeah, I mean, at some point, I don't know. But I know that they had found my flak jacket at one of Saddam's palaces, or that's what they told me at least. But yeah, because they even took a picture of it, and it had PV2. Well, at that time when I was a PFC when I deployed, but when I had
private first class people.
yeah, private first class. But when I first went in, when I was at my duty station, I was a PV2.
Yeah.
Private.
How long were you in the hospital for?
9 days. Yeah.
That's a long stretch.
It doesn't. I mean, obviously, when I look back at it, I'm like, man, some of these Vietnam and even World War II, these soldiers were in there for 5 years in imprisonment, and I think, and I was there for 9 days, and I thought I was going to die, which I literally, if I hadn't been found when I did, I don't think I would have made it much longer.
Just from the condition of your body from the injuries?
Yeah, I mean, and when they found me, I was around, I think they said about 89 pounds. I had lost at least 10 pounds just by laying there.
Were they administering medical care to you to the best of their ability?
I want to say no. But only because I really didn't get care.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a nurse that came around. There was an elderly lady that would rub talcum powder on my back.
That does a lot.
But other than that,
I guess it's better than nothing, but damn.
But I was so in and out of it that I.
Did you get any pain meds from them at all?
No, not too much. And then I remember them giving me like 4 ounces, like if you think of like a baby bottle of like Tang. Do you remember that?
Yes.
It was like an old orange juice kind of mixture. That's what it tasted like to me. But I remember them giving that to me, and that was the only kind of drink that I was given those 9 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea what had happened to the people that were with you?
No, I had asked just to kind of see if they would give me any kind of response, and of course they didn't.
Yeah.
There was one guy that could speak what I would call broken English,
Mhm.
which means I could talk to him and communicate with him, but it was very few and selected words. So basically, I was kind of solitude. I mean, I was just basically there by myself, not being able to communicate. There was a couple days where they left me and I wouldn't see anyone. And then there was days where these two Iraqi guys kind of guarded me the whole entire time.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Actually, was did they have? Because at that point, I don't even know. It almost seems like the Iraqi military, when the war kicked off, was like, whoa, 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 like we don't want any part of this.
Yeah.
So it was like the Fedayeen people. So there were on occasion people guarding you there. Did you feel a military presence, Iraqi military presence? And like I said, it may have been the Fedayeen or whatever. I don't know the proper term for it, so I'll just say Iraqi military presence. Do you feel that around you?
Um, no, not really. But I mean, I know at one point they said that there had been like people coming in. I mean, like especially with the Iraqi doctor that or lawyer that was supposedly to give you guys insight. I think at one time he said that he had seen people smacking me around, which I don't remember. But apparently he said that there were forces inside
Yeah.
the hospital at that time. Um, but I don't know. I wish I
Yeah.
knew so many, so many things that are just
You
kind of
probably have as many questions as I do,
I
or
do.
just about your
Yeah, and
where you were.
honestly, I tried to find out as much as I could when I first came home,
Hmm.
but there just weren't giving me any kind of details about anything.
Yeah.
And basically, they were like, "Well, you just be lucky that you're home, that you survived."
I
So I was
definitely want
like,
to talk to you about the after as well,
Yeah.
because actually, something I saw in the news after is what stuck with me for years, and I think probably motivated me in large part to reach out. And it ties into, I think, how they portrayed us coming on to the scene as well. It was a combination of that and actually the what happened with Pat and Kevin Tillman as well.
Yes.
It all ties in, but we got to get to that later.
Yes, 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 yes.
All right. So,
Yeah.
what do you remember about the night you got scooped out of the hospital?
Well, before anything had even happened, I was laying there, and I remember them taking me.
That's right. I was going to ask you. They put you in an ambulance, right?
They did at one point. They did take me. They put me
Just
in
as
an
like a tour of the
ambulance.
city. They wanted to show you the highlights, or what?
Well, I don't know why, because I couldn't see anything. Well, they said that they were going to return me to the Americans and return me over, and I was like, not okay, but there's not like anything I could do about it anyway. Unfortunately, we never made it to that checkpoint. They said we were fired upon, and they turned around, and at that point is when they took me to a building. And again, I don't know where we were at, but I remember it was very dark inside this building. And I remember them taking me and basically just leaving me. And there was no electricity. There was no kids. I mean, there were no voices. It didn't sound like anybody was anywhere around. And
Were you just like on a stretcher? They just picked
yeah,
you
it
up
was
and
just
put
like
you
in
down?
well, no. I was on like kind of the gurney,
gurney?
like yeah,
Okay.
or like the ambulance
Yep.
kind of bed. So they pushed me inside there and they left me. But yeah, I think that was the only point that I had been left alone. But yeah, I remember just kind of laying there and I was wondering, should I scream? Should I make noise? Should I, try to cause ruckus in hopes that there
Yeah.
would be Americans nearby? But I didn't in fear that I would attract the Fedayeen or,
Yeah.
because that was my one fear was, well, as long as I knew that I was with those, I will call them my Iraqi guards, because they kind of did. They kind of safeguarded me.
And those people you would describe as your Iraqi guards, do you think they were just employees of the hospital or people who worked at the hospital?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that they had some kind of affiliation with it.
Yeah.
But I never really did find out for sure of who they were. But yeah, I mean, and obviously I always had my guard up. but I knew that if I was with them, I was kind of safe.
Yeah.
Because I know that kind of sounds really weird, but in a sense, it made me feel, I don't know, comforting.
Well, it
That
sounds like
when they were there, you know what I mean? That I wasn't in the hands of the wrong.
it sounds like they were doing their best to at least be compassionate to you in your situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think they probably were answering to somebody else.
Well, the
But
best way to
yeah,
elicit information from you would have been to gain your
trust. Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, there's certainly, and that's why I was curious as if you felt that military presence. I mean, we go through, the SEER training, survival,
Yes.
escape, resistance, and evasion, and it's basically Camp Slappy. They smack you around and they put you in a box, and then we go to another one later on for, that would be the best description of it. Essentially, it was interrogation school 101. Not me interrogating, me on
Right.
the other side, and they would throw at you a variety of different approaches. The angry guy, like, hey, I need to get you out of here, guy, but I need a little bit of information from you. That the trust and confidence, everything
Yeah.
from it. They stopped doing it before I got there, but apparently they used to throw they'd come at you from a sexual nature, just to try to ply at you from all these different angles to get information. But coming out of that, probably the most effective one is to gain just trust and confidence.
Yeah.
If you talk to cops, slide the guy a beer and a cigarette and just say, hey, man, what's going on?
Yeah. No. Well, thankfully for us, I
Yeah.
didn't have any information to even give them.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I had no idea where anyone even was, if anyone was even still alive.
Yeah.
Just being left alone just kind of was like, well, I didn't know who had survived, who didn't, where anyone else was at.
Did you have a sense of the 9 days, or is that something you were able to figure out later on, just from the timelines?
No, I mean, well, honestly, to me, it felt forever. I
Yeah.
mean, like I felt like the clock was always ticking because I couldn't. Like I said, I was kind of in and out of it, so I never knew when I woke up if it was nighttime or if it was daytime, or how many hours had I fell asleep. Was I awake during this time, that time? I mean, it just all kind of ran together.
Yeah.
I wish. I wish I would have been able to know, but I mean, obviously there was no way. But yeah, so I guess sadly for them, I couldn't give them any information. Plus, I was the little tadpole at the bottom of the.
They have no way of knowing that, though. They probably thought you had
Yeah.
all the nuclear launch codes.
Probably, but thankfully for them, I didn't have nothing. So
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
how long did they leave you in that darked out room?
I want to say, and again, I don't know. But I'm gonna say there was at least a day, if not a day and a half, because I remember that. And then one of the other big or not stories, but memories, I guess I have is being taken down to the operating room and them trying to amputate my leg.
What?
Yeah, yeah, I remember them taking me downstairs and
Is this after or before the dark room that they put you in the gurney?
before.
Wow.
Yeah, so they tried to take me downstairs to, I found out afterwards of what they were actually trying to do, again with broken communication. But yeah, we fought them off with the oxygen mask. That was the only thing. I didn't have any kind of IV or anything to make me go to sleep, anesthesia. It was just the oxygen mask, and I remember just kind of fighting and crying and begging and pleading them just to please leave me alone. And yeah, eventually they did.
Wow.
They put me back over on the bed and wheeled me back upstairs. But yeah, I was going to tell you the one thing I remember is them transferring me from the night that I was rescued. I was in a room, but earlier that day they kept wheeling me outside in the hallway where there was these big windows and I could look out over top of other buildings.
Really?
But I remember that for some reason. I remember, and again, I have really bad vision, and of course they took my glasses. But
Were
after
they Army issued glasses?
Well, no, not at this time. Not at this time.
I was going to say that
Not at
could have been a favor.
right? That's one of the big stories that people love when I show the pictures of the birth control glasses. And
BCG's
I'm like,
birth control glasses. I will.
they are
Oh, man.
horrible.
Well, it depends on what the purpose of them was.
Well, I mean, they served their purpose.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, they serve its purpose. But yeah, I remember them wheeling me out to these big windows, and then they would put me back in the room, and then but I remember them just kind of moving around the
And
hospital.
and this
that
was
day.
the day, like the daylight hours
Yes,
of the day that
of
you
the
got rescued?
day, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I guess what I was told was they were trying to position me so that the Americans could see where I was at, but I don't know if that's true. And again, I've heard all kinds of stories over the past 15 years.
I can only imagine.
But yeah, I mean, but I remember them at the time that I was rescued, I was in an actual room with the two guards, and I remember one becoming very fidgety, and the other left the room, and then that's kind of how I was like, oh, something's about to happen. But I never imagined it would be a rescue.
Mm-hmm.
Like that wasn't on it was always a hope, but
Yeah.
it wasn't what I was thinking at the time. I was pretty positive that they were going to blow up the building because I could hear the helicopters, I could hear the Humvees.
I was going to ask, what you could hear.
I could hear all of that, like, coming closer to the building. And honestly, my reaction was not knowing I'm in here and they're going to blow this building up and take it down.
Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
kind of a sense of helplessness.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
because at this point, again, my back was broke, both legs were broke, my arm was broke. There was no moving, no getting up, no running out of the room for help. But yeah, I just oh crap, lay there until eventually I could hear outside in the hallway someone yelling, where's Private Lynch? And at that point is when I really kind of the fear kicked in. I mean, it had already been there the 9 days, but you know what I mean? Like, once you hear your name being called,
Yeah.
you're like, something definitely is happening involving me.
Yep.
But yes, they came in, and everything kind of got fuzzy, to be honest. I mean, because there was so much chaos and motion and just ruckus going on. I mean, I could hear them out in the hallway, and then I could, all these guys were over top of me trying to move me and ask questions. And but the one thing that honestly has stuck with me for the past 15 years is, one of them ripping the American flag off of his uniform and handing that to me. That's like, and I guess just because that's such a huge importance to me, that's definitely one of the memories that's really strong.
Yeah. And then from there, what was your journey from after the hospital?
Yeah, sure. I have no idea. I mean, I know I'm pretty positive they obviously took me out and they loaded me up, but I think it was Kuwait to get all the vitals.
Did you get loaded into the back of a medical transport aircraft pretty quickly?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that was staged at the Nasiriyah airport. I don't even know where we were staged, but at that aircraft, it was JMAO. And I can't for the life of me remember what it stands for, but it's basically a fully operational surgical suite. And they got you on that as fast as humanly possible. And I think in Nasiriyah, and then I think, you probably did go to Kuwait, then Germany.
I think it was Kuwait first, and then they got me out of there to Germany. But yeah, I remember, and once I was on the aircraft, I was done. Like, I was done. I mean, once they got me with medicine, I was woo, la la land for good.
Oh yeah, they probably juiced you right up. That's what they did for me when I got hurt too.
Yeah, I don't remember too much even about Germany. Like, I don't even remember my parents being there. I mean, I was completely out of it. The surgeries, I mean, because they had to stabilize me to even send me back over to Walter Reed. It was, and I think I was there for about 2 weeks in Germany, and there wasn't too much of it I remember.
Yeah.
I remember them trying to put me through a bunch of psychiatry, and, you need to talk, you need to talk.
Such bizarre time to do that, too.
I was not having it, though.
Yeah.
Not having it at all. So it did not work out. And no offense to the guy, it just
Yeah.
was not the right timing.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's yeah, you should talk through that stuff with somebody, but it needs to be on your timeline, not necessarily
Yeah.
the Army's at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get it. I understand what they were trying to do. It's just there was so much occurring, and I honestly, I was just out of it.
Yeah.
Like I do not have too much memory of Germany at all.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, you survived an incredibly traumatic and chaotic event,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I remember them trying to get me to set up. I remember that and that being very excruciating, painful, and I mean, it took all I could to just to set up, and
Yeah.
after that, I was like, nope,
Yeah. I got
this is not happening. Not happening either. But yeah, and then of course the plane ride over back to Walter Reed. Yeah, some good medicines there too, and I don't remember too much of that one either. So basically, his first 2 months were
yeah.
doozies.
And then how long after did you separate from the military?
I was July 22nd, so almost 2 years to the day that I actually went in.
Did they medically retire you?
I did, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Thankfully.
Yeah, there's some good benefits to that for sure. I was 5 days from just leaving the military. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And a doctor would not sign my discharge physical, which I had to extend for a year to work through the medical retirement. And I'm glad that I did. So
Yeah.
incredibly thankful that I was able to do that, not only for obviously the healthcare benefits, which, yes, the VA is not amazing. I've had both bad and good experiences, but it's better than nothing.
It is, yes.
And
Yes.
depending on where you live, you can go outside of that system, and then educational benefits for the kids
Yes.
as well too. So I'm glad that they took care of you in that respect, because you
Yeah.
certainly earned it.
I honestly have not had any problems. I mean, I know that, especially with the VA, they get such a bad rap of,
Some of it's deserved.
well,
It's
okay, I'm sure it has.
Let's
But,
call it hit or miss.
well, like around here, it's, people are always saying, oh, I had to wait a month to get in to see the doctor, or 2 months, or whatever it happens to be, or, oh my, I had to wait an hour to be even seen. And I'm going, I don't know if it's just because we have such a small community here
Yeah.
that it's not. I haven't experienced that here in West Virginia. It's kind of like
That's good though.
you're in, you're out. I mean, yeah, there's days when you have to wait 10, 15 minutes to be seen, but okay.
It's not an emergency.
No, not at all. So, I mean, I haven't really experienced too much, but, I have been working with some other people where we are kind of like trying to get some benefits, and I guess, how do I say this without stepping on toes? Just to see if we can make some progress in the VA. How about that? Yeah.
I think like any organization, it should continuously be updated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, the VA is not it shouldn't be a fixed element. It should be constantly improving. So
Yes.
yeah, like whatever can be done. I mean, warfare is changing, so the people who fight wars are changing.
Yeah.
So the organizations that support them should do exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Agree.
When did you learn about what had happened to the people that were with you?
I was not given any kind of information until I had already came back to Walter Reed.
So we're talking a couple weeks?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
They wouldn't let me read newspapers. They kept me away from TV. I mean,
What
I
would they
wasn't-
say when you asked them? Like, Lori, I know specifically one of your friends was Lori. Like,
Lori, yeah. I mean, they just kept telling me, oh, don't, we're not going to talk about it right now. I mean, they would just kind of push it off. Until one day I was like, I've got to know. I've got to know. And then Lori's family actually came and seen me in the hospital. So
that's awesome.
I mean, then they were able to kind of, because it was almost, then I almost felt it was like I had a survivor's guilt. I mean, but a stronger kind of, because I didn't bring their child back home too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just one of those things, and I'm sure you felt it.
Yeah.
it's horrible. I mean, it honestly is something that you can't get over. That it's kind of like the PTSD, but
Yeah.
almost a stronger version of, you just
I
it's
have
so
I have friends that have died, and I don't know if people will understand, but I wish that it had been me instead of them.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I don't wish that I had died. I wish that I had been me in that situation, or I had been there with them in that situation.
Yes,
So
yes,
I could try. Yeah, it's tough. It
yeah,
especially if the story arc of their life was similar to where yours is.
hmm
The age, and oh hey, we all started a family at the same time, and you get to see yourself raising your kids, whereas other families' kids are raised by ghosts and they
yeah,
have pictures on a mantle.
hmm
Yeah,
yeah.
it's I
It,
feel that for sure. Yeah.
it's so sad too. I mean, well, Lori's children are, 18, 19 now. They're
Yeah.
graduated. They're in college. I mean, they're doing very well. But I just felt, at the time they were 3 and 4.
Yeah.
But it was like, she already had a family. I mean,
Yeah.
and not that I didn't have a life worth living, like you just said. I mean, it's not that I wish that I had died, but if I could have just switched places with her.
Yeah.
I mean, things might have not have changed, but you know what I mean? I wish that she would have had that opportunity to come home to her kids.
I understand
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. And we may be the only two people who listen to this that understand, but I
Same.
understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, so from my side of the house,
Yes,
totally
let's hear
different
it.
experience. All right.
I hope so.
Uh, it was anticlimactic in a lot of respects. There was a huge lead up, and it's just, people make fun of military intelligence. Sometimes they should. But I think they're doing the best that they can,
Right.
right? So we had moved. We were looking at. My first deployment was to Afghanistan in 2002, late 2002, and right when we got back, mind you, I was a brand new guy at the squadron that I was at. So when we went to Iraq, that was my first deployment with that squadron. The previous deployment had just been an augment for a security detail for the president of Afghanistan. So I'm brand new, lowest dude on the totem pole. I had, I think, a sledgehammer on my back that I was responsible for, a breaching shotgun, and my rifle. Like, that was my job. That's all I did. And they would go this direction. I'm like, yes, okay, let's go that direction. So it was all very, very new. But we were looking at the main, obviously, the Iraq War. I think the intelligence structure where I was at and the information flow at the unit that I was at was vastly different than the unit that you were at. I mean, we were flying in specialists in architecture, air conditioning, because we were looking at chem and bio targets, the
Right.
chemical and biological threat, which is what the Iraq War was pitched underneath.
Right.
I got some issues in this current state of my life with how that was pitched. I actually remember a conversation with my dad, who was a Vietnam vet, was completely against the justification. And I was arguing with him because I was an idiot. And in hindsight, I wanted to go do my job. I think
Right.
that's what it was. And so I was like, no, they would never lie to us. And I've seen it because I had seen it. But guess what? When you look at information that's not correct, it doesn't matter what form it comes, it's still incorrect.
Right.
So our focus was chem bio. And we were looking at the number one chem bio target in Iraq, which was way up in the northwest corner. So that same time that you guys were probably getting in your vehicles, getting ready to go across, I remember the Bush, what did he say? Did he give him 24 hours or 48 hours? Let's call it 36, somewhere in between the two.
That sounds awesome.
He gave him somewhere between 24 and 48
Yeah.
hours. And then I remember the shock and awe, right? The cruise missiles. And
Yep.
then as the sun set that night, we got into CH-47s, and we flew for almost 4 hours with a mid-air refueling in between. There was a missile shot at the refueler, and it dove away from us. I mean, if you've never seen two Chinooks mid-air refueling on a C-130, it's a sight to behold. I mean, I actually choose not to look at it because there's so much in my mind that can go wrong. I just don't even want to see it when it goes
I was
wrong.
gonna say I can only imagine.
And mind you, we're in our chem bio gear, so this was the number one target. And 30 minutes out, I mean, it was pretty impressive how we were able to do this. So we had CH-47s flying, In C-130s, we had the little birds, the little Black Hawk helicopters that were flying ahead of us, that landed at a desert landing strip, that pulled the little bird helicopters off, took off, and then joined us when we were 30 minutes out from the target. 30 minutes out, threw our gas mask on, full MOP level 4, which I think mission oriented protective posture, MOPP. Yep, level 4.
Yes.
Give it a Google. It's not fun to run around in. It's a gas mask, which restricts your vision, which is then night vision goggles, which restricts your vision. And I was on the third 47 in, and we were getting shot at 1 minute out, and I didn't know. I had no idea that it was happening, and not a single person on our helicopter got hurt. We had 27 bullet holes in our 47.
Ooh.
Well, because it was really early in the war, like 6 minutes into it. They blew up the power facility, and it had a huge burning fireball, and we landed in between the fireball and the building. So we were backlit the whole time because we're awesome and we never make mistakes. So every subsequent helicopter that came in started getting shot up more and more and more. And I didn't realize we were getting shot at until the door gunner on the helicopter fell over because he got shot in the head. And ended up getting my favorite jacket tied around his head. The guy actually lived. I think there's probably some degradation from who he was before because of the damage to his head. Mm-hmm. But I was washing that jacket when I was telling you before we started. When I look out into the desert and there's Pat Tillman doing sprints with a parachute, I'm like, why?
Is this Pat Tillman?
Yeah, well, I didn't know it at the time, but I kind of assumed. I'm like, really? It's 120. But it was that same, just again, weird intersection. So we land and we go into the building. And again, I'm brand new. This is my first combat target ever. And I ripped my gas mask off maybe 2 minutes into being inside of the building because I would have rather died of anthrax or smallpox than being suffocated slowly in my gas mask.
Those things are horrible.
Well, and we realized, you could tell it was a completely abandoned building. And this was supposed to be the number one chem bio target. We literally had people come in like, look at the amount of air conditioning on this building. And we were looking at historical imagery where it appeared to be like a greenhouse structure and a tube that would come connect it from time to time. And so we swarmed this thing. Now, the little helicopters, the Blackhawks, are fully engaged with people out because they're running around with AKs shooting at the helicopters because the war is on. Meanwhile, we're in a building. There's textbooks. It was an agricultural school. So that was what the number one chem bio target in Iraq ended up being, was a chem bio school. We go and we look at it was a greenhouse, and they wanted us to take dirt samples from the green. It was so blatantly obvious that it wasn't what it was supposed to be. And the cost, no Americans got killed, but the Ranger blocking positions took some casualties, which is how Pat Tillman ended up working with us. He ended up replacing one of the guys that got hurt. So that was the number one target. And then we had to fly back 4 hours. And I remember waking up the next morning and like kind of getting up and just wiping the sleep out of my eyes because we had landed right at first light as the sun was coming up. And I'm sitting down on a bench with my buddy who was also it was his first deployment. We went through selection together. And I don't remember exactly what I said was, but something along the lines of, so, about last night, I don't know if we're going to survive, if it's going to be like this. And maybe it was a day or two after that, we started getting indications about what had happened with you. And eventually we got enough indications that they surged us to, it had to have been very close to Nasiriyah. I think it might have been the actual airfield there. And we ended up staging and planning there inside of basically it looked like an aircraft or an ammunition bunker that was kind of just bombed out. Like there was no doors on it, but the classic like dirt mound. Mm-hmm. Remember the night we got there, I literally just threw my backpack on the ground and just fell asleep on the dirt because I was exhausted. And it's, in modern day TV shows, it's big 200-inch TV screens and like laser pointers and imagery and all this stuff. We had Intel people on like little Toughbook laptops cranking away with little printers pointing stuff out. That picture that I sent you, the reference guide that we carried, was literally printed out in there. And I try to remember all of the details. I think we were there for a couple of days. I think 2 days before we ended up actually doing something. And then I think what really tipped it over for us was that we actually got the video that the lawyer I think he had carried it in a suitcase or a bag. But we were able to, from looking at the overhead imagery, we were able to determine where he entered the building.
Mm-hmm.
The route that he took going, you were on the second floor. So the route that he took to get to the second floor, and then in the video, as he came up the stairs, he came to a T intersection and he went to the right. And it was, I think, 3 doors down, opened the door, and it was only a quick panning shot, but you could definitely tell that it was view in the hospital bed. So we were like, there was probably, I don't know, maybe 40 SEALs all piled around looking at the video. And then you have the intel people, talking about the Fedayeen and the fact that they were using the hospital as a safe zone, basically, because the U.S. doesn't want to bomb a hospital for good reason.
Right.
Which is why I was kind of asking if you felt the military presence around you, because they were showing us essentially school buses and saying that Fedayeen were using the school bus from the hospital as a staging area to kind of travel around, and then they would come back to the hospital. They're like, hey guys, all of the buses are there. We estimate that there's 40 to 400 Fedayeen on target. You guys ready to go? And we could fit, I think, 27 people on the helicopters. Yeah, that's the job, right?
Right, right.
And you're always going to accept more risk. As soon as we saw the video as well, and it wasn't all big helicopters. We had some Blackhawks, which is the kind of bird that you were loaded onto, and then we had some of the little birds. Well, high ground has worked since Sticks and Stones. So I think the first 2 little birds went to the roof, which is probably why you heard them initially, because we put snipers on the roof. And then the Blackhawks started landing right in the courtyard. I mean, there was probably 15 feet of rotor blade distance from the edge of the hospital to the rotors themselves. But those pilots, the TF-160th guys, oh my God, they have scared me so badly in the course of my life. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die. And I look over and the guy's just laughing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to kill you.
They are skilled.
They're skilled. So we couldn't fit everybody on the helicopters. So we did what's called a half GAF, a helicopter assault force, and a ground assault force, which is probably why you heard vehicles as well. And we loaded up. We had blocking positions. Kevin and Pat were involved in the blocking positions as well. And they left first to stage in town, and then a large contingent of conventional military staged essentially I guess it would be a ruse, but they tried to be pretty overt about their actions to draw attention away. And we launched. And I remember I was supposed to be on one of the little birds. And then somebody remembered that I was basically brand new, and they're like, get in the back. You're on one of the bigger helicopters. Like, damn it.
So close.
But, it's the hindsight of so dumb. It was like just a total moment of selfishness. Like, how could you do that? Do you not know who I am? I'm such a big deal. Surrounded by guys who probably think the same thing. But I ended up sitting on the left-hand side door of a Blackhawk, just with my feet dangling out, next to the senior enlisted guy who put me through selection the previous year.
Wow.
And I remember I was chewing on a piece of gum because I was scared out of my mind. The adrenaline does weird things, and it kind of dries your mouth out. And so I was chewing a piece of gum. I remember when it lifted up, and we just started hauling ass towards the hospital. And we have radios. Our communication setup was probably a little bit more high speed than what you guys were rolling with. So we had the ability to kind of monitor what's going on in real time. And I remember we got detailed in our planning. I remember there was tape outlines of the actual hospital. We knew where we were going to land. We knew where the stairs were. And because of the fact that it's what we consider a hostage rescue, how would be the best way to describe this? You will move faster than you normally would, because our biggest fear would be that as we're coming down, they go, killer, and they try to beat us to you.
Right.
Most of the time it's slow and deliberate. Like if there's no compelling reason to run around with your hair on fire, don't run around with your hair on fire.
Right.
So most of the time it'd be very slow and deliberate. In this particular situation, we essentially had people dedicated, like you, and you are going to run to the stairwell. You're going to run to the top of the stairwell, and we're going to get to the door of the room that we thought you were in. And again, to reiterate, I was physically present I was a brand new guy. Like I had a very, very small role in any of this other than being there.
You were still there though.
I was still
so
there.
Thank you.
Yeah, very welcome. Very, very welcome. And so we land and run around the fueling probe of the Black Hawk and come into the building. And I got there just as we were making entry onto the second floor. And I was pissed because I wanted to go to the right because that's where I thought you were. I was like, God damn it. I ended up having to go to the left though because it's all based off of kind of a flow. If it's angles really is
Right.
all it is. So I ended up going left, and I remember them making entry into the room that you were supposed to be in, and we skipped all of the other doors and all of the other rooms, which is it's not that it's not more dangerous necessarily. Like maybe we'd have somebody point a gun at a door just in case something happened, but we were very direct in what we were trying to do.
Right.
I remember the call coming out. I could just hear it. They're like, all right, the room's empty. And at that point, it switched to a little bit more slow and deliberate, which is probably where you started hearing, like,
Right.
where is she?
Right.
So then we started making our way down to the left, and you were in the exact room you were supposed to be in, just on the other side of the hallway. So I bet you they just wheeled you to if my memory serves me, it was the third door that we were looking for, and I didn't come into the room. It was my team leader, who he doesn't know I'm up here talking to you, but his name's HB, so we won't give his whole name out.
Yeah, no.
And a pararescue jumper, a PJ. They were probably the two because HB had a corpsman. He was a corpsman background. He actually went through the 18 Delta short and long course, I think, which is what we send our medics through. And then the PJs are just phenomenal. I mean, the Air Force pararescue, it's their job. They're like fully, like if you start leaking hydraulic fluid, you want a PJ. And they took care of that, and I ended up basically just outside of your door. And at that point, once we knew you were there, we started creating a foothold in the hospital because we had to move you. And, I mean, imagine going through all that effort and having somebody at the end of a hallway peek their head out and
Right.
just start shooting. So we started shotgunning doors, which you weren't super happy about at that time. It was because it sounds like a gun going
Right.
off. It's
Yeah, I remember being scared. I remember being jumpy.
Well, there was internal. So I had one of the shotguns. I was shooting locking mechanisms on doors. We were sledgehammering doors, and we were just basically trying to create an avenue that you could be carried down. Do you remember there was the video footage of you in the
Yes.
bed in the hospital? Do you
Yes.
remember a guy standing there with a camera?
Vaguely.
And this ties into later on too. Like one of the reasons I wanted to reach out is I didn't see what happened to any of that stuff because even after all this happened, we picked up the next day and we went back to RR, and then we were in Baghdad a week later. Like it just was.
Yeah, continuous.
It was continuous, and I didn't realize what had happened until later, and how it was spun. But the video of you on the stretcher, obviously in the black and white, that's thermal. That's from the FLIR ball on the helicopter. But everything else from inside, one of the officers was tasked with carrying a video camera. And there's more footage than what had aired, but I think a lot of the footage is more of us doing the clearance, which is why it didn't get shown. But I remember, it's funny. It was funny to me. Probably wasn't funny to you, but one of the shotgun breaches went off, and you're like, ah!
Yes. Well, actually, I think that's in the. I think that's on one of the YouTube ones.
It might be.
That where I kind of was like,
Yeah.
and then we were like, no.
Yeah, it's not super
it's
quiet.
Okay, it's
yeah,
okay.
it's not super
and I was
quiet.
like,
Yeah.
Everything was chaotic at that time, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm over.
And again, in the back of my head, and I can only speak for myself, and again, like how I felt on the way in there. But in my head, I kept hearing 40 to 400, like, what's going on? Where are these people? That's the mentality that we launched with. It certainly wasn't. You're going to a hospital where you're not going to encounter anybody with a gun. It's like, this is the best intel we have. You're probably going to die. Helicopters leave in an hour.
Right.
So get a meal and some sleep if you can. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not going to be doing either of those things. But in the back of my head, I kept thinking about that. And then once we were able to create that corridor, I remember them picking you up and taking you down to the helicopter. And then we stayed there for hours afterwards, just kind of. Then it switched to slow and methodical. There was no more running around, and we ended up, down in the basement where they had a table, probably about the size of the table we're sitting at right now, of the town of Nazareth with buildings and terrain where they would basically come plan. So there definitely was that element of it was being used for what they were saying. I mean, that's what I would do if the U.S. was attacked and we were attacked by somebody who wanted to play by the rules of war,
Right.
and they didn't want to bomb religious locations and medical locations. That's where I would go. That's where I would plan until they realized that that's what they were doing, and then the rules changed. We found all that stuff. I believe I was not involved with the recovery of the bodies, but I believe they found the bodies of the people from your unit on site in the property
Yes.
of the hospital.
I think most of them they said was on the soccer field, which kind of weird to me.
Which
But
I never
apparently
saw.
The
I don't.
soccer
Yeah.
field was attached, or like behind the hospital. Like apparently there was some kind of big field that the kids were using as like a soccer field, and they said that their bodies were, put in shallow graves there. That at some point they were in kind of like a morgue, and then they were dumped outside of the. Which is just to me is horrifying.
It's the worst thing you could ever imagine happening to somebody you care about.
Well, absolutely. And I have wanted to talk to the Payaswas, just and not just because I kind of have preference over them, but I was so close to Lori, but I just can't because I've had other individuals send me stories. Well, I was part of it. This is what I found. This is what I've seen. This is how I felt. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, I just can't. I can't give that to the Payestwas, knowing that they're going to read that about their daughter, and it just tears me up. And even me reading it, and I look like a baby crying, and I'm not an emotional person. I don't.
Stop it. You're a woman. By default, you're an emotional person.
I would love to say yes, but I'm not. I was like, wow, it's horrifying to even think that they would do that to us. But yeah, I'll have to send that to you.
Okay.
Because it's very
I know that it happened there, but like I said, the only time I was outside of the hospital was when I was on the helicopter coming in.
Yeah.
And coming out, getting onto the helicopter. I know that that stuff happened, but we kind of just kept expanding outward slowly and slowly and slowly, and then the people in the vehicle convoy had to reload. We kind of it's very synchronized in a lot of respects. It's very organized and synchronized, and whoever shows up first kind of leaves for we kind of unwind, we go back.
Yeah.
But we got the word that we had there was a lot of people monitoring the satellite net. I forget. Touchdown was probably what was passed over the radio. You were Objective Barracuda, which I don't know where they came up with that name, but I've remembered the name of that objective since that day. And then it slowly just kind of wound down, and we went back to the same hangar, and we got on a C-130 in broad daylight, and this guy flew like 4 inches off the ground, trying to make me sick to my stomach, all the way back to Saudi Arabia. And I don't think we launched on another target from Saudi Arabia. I think from there it was straight into Baghdad. And we took over this hangar that was so pocked with bullet holes from I don't know when, from the Iran-Iraq. I don't even know what it was from. We affectionately called it the bird shit hangar because there was pigeons living in the roof, and they would just crap everywhere, and we had cots.
No.
And like I was telling you, it was honestly kind of awesome.
Well, see, that's kind of things that we laugh about, and everyone else is like, seriously, why are you laughing about that? That's not funny.
So much stuff happened there, though. So much stuff happened there. Like we got we couldn't use the phone. We had some Iridium satellite phones. We were not allowed. We were in a total comms blackout the entire time, which also meant we couldn't see really the footage. And that's why, I'll talk about the footage here in a minute and what it was that I wanted to reach out to you for. But no mail. We got one set of packages, and it was the classic coffee and Skittles, essentially. No, you know what it was? It wasn't Skittles. It was Girl Scout cookies. Oh, my God. And in that, I had a box. and in that hanger, I opened a box, the only box I got from my wife, and it was the ultrasound tape, like It's a
Aw.
Boy. And then I immediately ate his sleeve of Thin Mints and couldn't do anything for days. That was the most effective thing the Iraqi army could have done, was given us Girl Scout cookies at that point, because guys wolf them down
Yes.
and we're done for 24 hours just laying in their back. Just, oh, my stomach hurts so bad. But then we started going in. I mean, then it was downtown Baghdad, then it was into Fallujah, and we just never stopped until we got home. And it wasn't until I got home that I saw how it was being spun. They rushed into this firefight, and it really bothered me. It had bothered me since that day. I mean, they made a made-for-TV movie about it, like all sorts of just, and the only word for it is crap. I mean, that's
Yes.
the only, and that's the polite version of the word. It's
Which we should say was unauthorized. I did not give any, did not give them right to use that.
They didn't ask me for anything. I could have made up a way better story. I could have just made some stuff up as
Well,
opposed
you know,
to.
I got blamed for that. I
Did
mean,
you
I got,
really?
yeah. Oh, I've gotten blamed for everything, and I'm like, really, people? Like, I didn't have anything
Yeah.
to do with, you know, the media, that TV
Yeah.
hour long that they showed. That was completely unauthorized. They didn't have my right to use that at all. But of course, my name was a public
Yeah.
figure, and
So-
whatever information they had, they were allowed to use.
That kind of ties into, I think at the end of the day, why I always had a desire to reach out to you, is because you were definitely a public figure, and it reminded me later of what the military, I believe, and this is just me talking, did with the Tillman family as well
Yeah.
too.
Yes.
The advantage is a poor word. The difference being, Pat was a celebrity on the way in. So they had the opportunity to use him as, look at this patriot, multi-million-dollar athlete.
And they did.
Yes.
They did just that. Yes.
And that's what I think bothered me the most. I remember, and then there's obviously what happened afterwards, and they also tried to spin that too with the,
Yes, they
you
did.
know, the bottom lining a silver star and just totally lying about it, which is what it is, totally lying about an incident that they knew was friendly fire when they were bottom lining those awards, because then it bow tied that story. Look, he was a hero on the way in and a hero on the way out. Your local recruiting office is just down the road. I remember watching a video of you in a parade. I think you were sitting on the back of a Corvette.
Probably my homecoming.
It might have been.
My homecoming, which they made a big to-do about.
And what I remember is that it seemed like you felt very uncomfortable with it. I could tell, and then again, this is an assumption.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely, no, that was my first public appearance. They took me straight from Walter Reed.
Yeah.
I literally had just gotten out of the military that morning. They loaded me up on a helicopter, flew me here to West Virginia. I got out of the helicopter into the back of into the car,
Yeah.
and
Pretty sure it was a red Corvette. Just tell
yeah,
me it was a red Corvette.
It was.
Yes.
It was a red Corvette, to be honest. Actually, I don't know if it was a Corvette, but it was a convertible.
Definitely a Corvette.
It sounds better as
Yeah.
a Corvette. But yeah, and then we did the homecoming speech, was basically just thanking everyone for coming out, and then I got to go home finally.
Yeah.
Home finally. But after that had come out, was the whole fabricating stories, and this happened and that happened,
And that's what bothered me. I feel like the military used you, and I could tell. I couldn't tell. I guessed by watching that video and just by seeing the look on your face that you were uncomfortable with how you were being treated, and it bothered me since that day. For
yeah,
the
there
same
was
reasons,
definitely.
yeah, and it's for the same reasons that what happened to the Tillman family just drive me absolutely bananas, because I don't understand the end state. I don't understand why the military, and I worked in the military for 17 years. I don't understand the desire to tell a lie that over a long enough time period, it will come out. And
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like the classic example of a short-term tactical victory, but you're definitely going to have a strategic loss. I remember, I forget where I heard it, but I think it was like senators or congressmen saying that you need to be the first female Medal of Honor recipient. And I watched I was talking with Kevin, like I said, he came to the house and he was telling me about, and he recommended I watch your testimony in Congress, which I did, which was awesome.
Thank you.
By the way.
Scared, by the way. I was beyond scared.
I don't understand why. Was there cameras there? Was it a national stage? I don't.
Well, I mean, yeah, all of that.
What could have possibly?
I think it was more for the fact, one, that I was not, I went from being raised here in West Virginia. I was not a public figure at all.
Yeah.
But then going, and kind of one of that being one of my very first kind of, other than my homecoming, and I had to sit there and basically tell them that they were liars, and what they did to me, they did to Pat.
Yeah.
And I think just the fact that I had to sit there and say, quit making up stories, quit, we have, and when it is so true, we have so many heroes. Why are we fabricating?
Yep.
And now, don't get me wrong, I'm very thankful that I'm survived and I'm here today, but I just think the whole scenario of how it happened.
Well, even the rescue from our side as well too. I mean,
Yeah.
there wasn't a shot fired on target, but that's a good thing. And they
Yeah.
made it into this storming the castle scenario, which it absolutely could have been, and that's what we thought we were going into.
Yeah.
But you don't have to add the little ... and then it happened. Like, why
Right.
can't we just say? I mean, to have an intel specialist look at you and say, hey, there's probably 40 to 400 Fedayeen. We're doing the math. I'm like, okay, 27 people on the helicopter. We're only going to land about 8 at a time. Okay. I mean, I'm not great at math, but I can look at those odds. And then,
Right.
that's enough. Why does it have to be something else? And that, I remember watching you in the back of that Corvette, and it bothered me.
Yeah.
And I could tell it bothered you. And I think that's why it bothered me, because I could tell, to me, it felt like the military used you.
And I think they did. I mean, without bluntly saying it, but I mean,
I'll say it. They did.
I think it was, and I think I've said this in the past somewhere, but I think it was a way to boost the morale of, or, we're going into war and this is, it's all okay because look what happened, now we have this and now we have Pat and, it's okay.
Well, you remember that first target I was telling you about, the number one chem bio target? We still hadn't found anything during that time period. I think, of course, vision being better looking back, I almost think they used it as an opportunity to say, hey, look at this is awesome. Yeah. This is what happened. It was an opportunity to say, hey, don't focus on the chem bio stuff for right now. Like, just look at this. And I will say this: I feel privileged that I was able to serve in the military. My thing when I talk about the military is I just try to be honest. There's pros and cons. In my opinion, the military absolutely used you, and they absolutely used Pat and Kevin, and they absolutely used our unit in its description, in describing what went down to achieve their end. The Army needs butts in seats.
Well, no, I will agree with that. Yeah. Absolutely.
And now, having said that, the vast majority of people that I ever encountered in the military were these stand-up 110% of what you thought that they would be. Those people are not reflective of the actions that the military took in those situations. I just try to be honest about that. Like, yes, the military will do some crazy stuff, which is driven not from the guy who's got the boots on the ground, but from the guy who's at the fifth story of wherever it is, looking down at whatever it may be. It's tough.
Which is so sad. I mean, because
but it is the reality.
Not only could they have cost lives, it just was unnecessary. Fabrications of these stories. I mean, and that's what it is. I mean, they were complete false lies. They were lies.
How did the military respond when you said that? Or were you out when you started because when you testified in conference, you were already out.
I was already out.
Did the military maintain any interaction with you at all? Any public affairs officers, anything like that?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. And that's why, like I said, I try to find out more details of, what happened, what actually what went down? And I never got any kind of feedback or
Yeah.
anything of just recently I was able to meet a couple of guys that were, kind of like you, were there. They saw, and they've kind of gave me some written stories of, I mean, well, we face to face, but I mean,
Yep.
like, I then had them, okay, can you put it down so just so I can have
Yeah.
it? I've never went on record with it or anything. I mean,
Yep.
this is just, I just wanted it for my own good to tuck away in a file and say, okay, well, when my daughter gets old enough and
Yeah.
she wants to know, okay, well, what happened? I mean, that's stuff that I'll be able to look back on and be like, well, here you go. This is, but I mean, I've
Yeah.
never went out in the news and said, well, so and so said,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that was the place or time for it. And I think, it's just what happened. It was unfortunate. It was unfortunate with what they did with my story, with Pat and Kevin. I mean, and I'm sure we're probably not going to be the only two that's ever, it's probably not going to stop with the two of us. Although we
Well,
gave it an all with the
Yeah.
congressional hearing.
it's almost like the people you were talking to weren't listening, though. It's so weird.
Huh.
That's a totally different
crazy.
podcast. And again, as soon as we start talking about that, I'm so far outside of my depth. It's I agree with everything you said. I wish it would have just been left as it was. I've heard. I think I watched about 2 minutes of the made-for-TV movie. That's about as far as I made it.
You probably made it further than I did. Once
Yeah.
I seen that we were drinking like hot tea, and I don't even remember what it was. It was something else that they were serving us in the middle of the desert. No,
Yeah.
I was done because I was like, all right, first of all, that never happened. I was the one scrounging the MREs to find the Skittles.
But Jessica, if it happens on TV, it's real.
It's true. It
Yeah.
is true.
And-
I've heard that before.
And
It is
if
true.
you see it in the movie theater, because the screen is bigger, the legitimacy and authenticity is that much.
Definitely true. I will have to remember that.
Well, no, I've heard people. Somebody was saying that they delayed for a day, just to stage it to make it look, so the timing would be better. That was one thing that I had heard, actually semi recently. I forget. I was down a rabbit hole on the internet, which is not a good idea for anybody
No.
at all. But I mean, again, that wasn't my experience. I
Yeah.
mean, we might have delayed a day. I don't really remember. Like the whole first deployment was like it was a abstract painting getting thrown in front of my face, and sitting here talking with you, I'm actually remembering stuff that I hadn't remembered in a long time. But
Right.
I don't think we delayed for a day. We might have, but it probably was because of the illumination. I mean, I don't want to have a huge full moon behind me in a helicopter.
Right.
Not awesome things happen when you do that, but
But it was a good story.
that's what bothers me. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I agree completely. I mean, and again, this has been 15 years, so it's been 15 years of me trying to find answers, and then finally I just you kind of just give up, and then things just kind of fell in place where people were like, oh, they'll meet me out and about, or if I'm in a different city or something, they'll be like, oh, hey, so and so was a part of this. Let me hook
Yeah.
you up with him. He can give you a better insight of what actually happened. Or Facebook is wonderful for that. I've had people contact me through.
Yep.
But I always have to worry because I never know who's actually legit.
Are you saying there's crazy people on the internet?
Well, I mean,
I've noticed that
heard
everybody's
too.
Facebook profile is totally legit.
They are. They are. That is one thing that you have to be. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's well, yeah, the interconnectedness is a dangerous thing, as well, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But I mean, it's been wonderful. The ones that I have been able to verify, the information with has been kind of,
Well, there's a variety
amazing.
different. I mean, somebody who was in the vehicle convoy would have a totally different perspective and
Yes.
can probably give you a different
Mhm.
angle. And somebody from the blocking position could. I mean, like I said, I was
Yeah.
one dude sitting on a helicopter, like as we were flying in, watching all the strobe lights go off of the people that were doing the
Yeah.
false. I was just like, wow, this is bizarre. So, what do you do now?
Well, I am a teacher is one thing that I have enjoyed. That was
What age?
well, I do subbing for right now,
Okay.
so I I like them little though. I like the
How
little.
little are we talking?
Like the kindergarten level.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I like the little ones because now that phones and I mean,
Yep.
the cell phones and electronics in school drive me nuts. Like I guess because I grew up without
Yeah.
without that.
I actually don't. I don't know. I can't even imagine what it would be like. I had a hard enough time in school as it is. I didn't need to also be awkwardly struggling my way through face-to-face interactions.
Right?
While at the same time, like my sons are like, I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm on Snapchat, and I just want to take their phone and snap it.
As we are watching
Yeah.
her play on her phone.
I
Yes.
was probably suboptimal, subpar at the face-to-face interaction. I didn't need to be chatting with people that I don't. It's
Now try teaching
I don't
20
see how
to
you could do it.
25 people that are constantly, on their phones, and we're like,
So as a sub, do you like all? Well, if you're teaching, do you ever teach older kids?
oh, I do, yeah.
Okay.
And that's how I know about the
Yeah.
with the cell phone usage. Which they are supposed to, especially middle schools or junior highs, they are not allowed to have their cell phones out. I think like the 7th, 8th grade kind of level, they're allowed to use them for educational purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But what, 13, 14 year
YouTube
old.
is educational, right?
I've heard it is. I've heard it is.
That's what, and
I've
I'm
heard
just
it.
saying that because that's what my sons would say. But Dad, I'm watching. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, exactly. But no.
yeah. Do your students ever ask you about your time in Iraq?
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
How do you answer them?
Well, I take the teacher
Mm-hmm.
answer route and always kind to lure them back into the well, here's what we're learning.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that on lunch break or, and then we never I never go there. But it also depends on the age level. I mean,
Yeah.
the high schoolers, they're basically good because let's face it, they're learning about this already
Yeah.
in history. And I'm going, wow, who would have ever thought at 35 I would be in the history books?
How is it being taught? That's wow. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, well, my son, they're going to start learning about that in their history class. How is it being taught? From what perspective? Do you find it as somebody who is involved being taught from an objective perspective, or can you tell that there is a slant to it one way or the other?
No. I think, well, I mean, I guess it probably depends on what book, because every school uses different history books. The ones that we have here, I've never seen anything negative, but it's always direct to the point. Like, all right, so this is September 11th, this is what occurred, but it's never biased or it's not.
Sticks to more factual bait.
Yeah,
On this
yeah.
date,
I
the
mean,
war in
this
Iraq
is what
began.
happened.
Okay.
This is, so I've never seen anything that was more, Wikipedia version.
Yeah.
It's here's what happened. This is on this day. This and this happened, but nothing that's been negative. So that's the good news to it. But it's still weird just to think that
Yeah.
I'm in a history book. Like that's for George Washington, not
George
not for
Washington,
me.
Jessica Lynch.
I know,
yeah.
right? It's back-to-back pages.
What would you say to your daughter if she wanted to join the military?
You know what? I've always said that I am open to her joining if that's something that she honestly felt that she wanted to do. I have no problem with that because, again, I mean, especially now that, we've had more cousins and my uncles are, so we are a very patriotic family. But I will probably have to kind of give her a little more of the risks and the dangers of joining and
Or the realities is what I would call them.
yeah.
Because the recruiter, I won't, my experience with the recruiter, I won't say that there was any lies. I would
No.
say that there
Well,
was
they're doing their job though.
I'd say
like-
there's some wave tops that maybe were glossed over. It's not lying.
Yeah.
They selectively spent less time on certain topics.
right? Right? Well, but he made it sound, and again, my recruiter was awesome.
Yeah.
He even, after everything had happened to me, he came back to my home, spent time with my family, my parents, he apologized for for even enlisting me. I mean, so he was definitely awesome. But I think you're right though. Their main goal was
Yeah.
to sign people up, get butts in the seats.
The recruiters
And
and the military,
yeah,
without warm bodies in
yeah,
uniform, they don't continue to
yeah,
survive.
yeah.
When you look back at your military career, are you more proud about it or are you angry?
No, definitely proud.
Good.
I think with everything that had happened, I don't, there's some things that you just let go, and others you find the good in it. And for me, it was um, one being able to come home, obviously, but just everything that I've been able to accomplish since then.
Well,
And
what are
getting
you up to these days other than
what
teaching? I know you're
well,
a
teaching.
busybody
Yeah, well, I am actually. Yeah, yeah.
out in LA with
Out
the
in
wild
LA,
people.
traveling on I-5, getting stuck on 405.
That could be the worst combination of roads. Like the I-5, 405 could be about as bad as it gets on the face of the planet.
Well, that's why I try to avoid those. And like, if you stay like the down, like down toward Venice or like
Yeah. I just avoid the
Delaware.
entire area. We lived in San Diego for 10 years. We got out of there.
I took her to her very first San Diego trip last August, and we loved it there. But we were the touristy.
Yeah.
We totally did the touristy
Any place is
stuff.
awesome for like 72 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're in
The
traffic
week.
like that, I used to have to
Yeah.
commute from San Diego to LA probably 3 to 4 times a month, and that's at least 6 hours in your car per day if you don't hit brake lights. It gets bad.
And that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, as you could tell, you hear
I was stuck behind a car earlier today. I was very upset. It was a traffic
a
jam out
car.
here.
Yeah, yeah, that's usually what it is. You stop more for the deer.
Yeah. Well, what's the
Or the
population
gears.
in this town?
Oh gosh, I don't even know. I mean, there's a couple. I would say probably 20 to 30 here.
Yeah.
30,000 here, but back in my hometown, there's maybe 5,000.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, very small, small. But
Well, we moved from a subdivision of San Diego that had 200,000 to a town of 20,000 right now. And just north of us is I don't know when it switches from a city to a town, but there's a town up there that has about 8,000. It's a palpable difference in your life. Like
yes,
I actually am pissed that I didn't do it years ago.
and
Because
it's so much more relaxing. I mean, you don't stress. Like,
I'm not going to go that far. I think I might be a stress case most days that end in Y, but at least when I'm stressed out, I can go outside and look at the mountains as opposed to look at a track home that's like 6 feet from my house.
well, see, like here, like for me to get here this morning, it took me about 40 minutes, which no traffic.
Yeah.
Like literally no traffic. We're just that far out
Yeah.
that it takes you that long to get in into town.
I don't
But
know
I
about-
wouldn't trade it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for where I live now, too. I could drive all day long in Montana, and I'm literally just like, oh, that's awesome. Oh, we should look at the road a little bit. I'm just like lake and a mountain, and there's some elk. It's unbelievable.
Yes, I've heard it's beautiful there.
You have to come visit.
I will.
Bring your daughter up, check out the lake.
I will.
But before we stop, what are you up to these days? Because I totally cut you off because you're a busybody.
For the third time in a row.
Yeah.
Well, no, as you can kind of hear her. Well, I guess you can't hear her, but you can see her. I'm a mom to a 11-year-old now, and teacher, and then I'm also a motivational speaker. And let's see, when I'm not doing that, oh my goodness, I do still travel, but it's more business and not even motivational. It's more just kind of business trips. So yeah, I mean, let's see. I am putting together a new leadership book, which will not focus on so much of what happened, but more about how to overcome like stories like you and I have. So I might have to hit you up for a couple
Go
of
for it.
pages in there, a couple chapter. We'll just call it the Annie and Jessica book.
I'm game. I am constantly in a struggle with myself to not define myself by what I used to do. there's some I've seen firsthand, and this doesn't apply to everybody, but I've seen some really negative consequences to some of the guys who cannot hang it up.
Right.
And they were a SEAL, and that they're always going to be a SEAL, and they have
Yes.
to act like a SEAL, and it's like, I have
Mm-hmm.
no emotions, I'm a robot. And I don't know, that just never has fit with me. And like, there's a ton of SEAL books. You'll never believe that. I think
yeah, no.
today there was 7 published. If not today,
If
there
not more.
tomorrow. Yeah. And most of them,
Yeah.
if not all of them, are, let me tell you a war story. Let me tell you a war story, which is entertainment. And I think if you want entertainment, okay, but just look at the book as entertainment. And there
Right.
are only a few that I think do a good job of taking an experience and extrapolating from that something that you can move forward with.
Right.
And do something with. And it's no longer, I guess there is an entertainment aspect about reading about the situation or the operation, but then it's, hey, this is what I learned from this, and this is how you can apply it in your life. And I just slowly and constantly want to work away from what I used to do, because I don't actually even know what the hell I do for a living. My least favorite question is, what do I do? Like, starting a podcast for me was a suggestion from somebody else who was very successful in the podcasting world. I'm like, all right, you probably know what you're talking about, so I'm going to do it. But every time that I take a step away from it, I actually feel better, because I want to stand on my own 2 feet, not the 2 feet of the multiple sets of 2 feet from the community that I came from. I just don't think it's healthy I don't think it'd be healthy for you if in 20 years you wrote a book about this is what happened to me, because that would mean that you're
Still stuck there.
there, or not, or
Yeah.
maybe not even living there, but you're at least constantly kind of looking over your shoulder. And I've just seen, it's really weird. For whatever reason, there's a lot of SEALs that die in their early 40s for reasons that most of them, I mean, well, not most of them, that's a bad word to choose. Some of them is because they still drink super, super hard. But other ones, and this is totally anecdotal, I think their knuckles are constantly white.
Yeah. No, I
Because
agree.
they were able to unwind. And I don't think the body can burn at both ends like that. I know I can't, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it would have been, I don't think I would have been happy or satisfied. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing a book about that. And
Well, I mean, and
I'll
I
do
agree
some
with
pictures. I mean, people ask me all the time if I'm going to write a book. I'm like, listen, I'm tapped out at a coloring book. Stick figures. So if you need some stick figures, I'll like.
Well, then I got you there too,
Yeah.
because I am definitely not the art teacher. Whenever they call it, it's for art, and I'm like, nope,
Yeah.
nope, unless they are drawing boxes
Yeah.
or something along that line.
It's going to be an abstract art day, for sure.
Yeah, you better just give me the lesson, and I'll just tell them what to do, because we are not teaching them.
So do you, in your life now, I mean, obviously you're doing speaking, you're writing a book, so you're probably trying to find a balance between private, personal life and public, professional.
No, honestly, I live a very private life now. I mean, yeah,
It took
I'm
me a
still.
while to track you down. You do live a pretty private life.
I do, which is kind of crazy. I mean, because people think that I'm out there, but no, I live a very private life. I do the motivational speaking. I do travel a lot, but for the most part, I'm not the one out there seeking.
Yep.
Like, oh, hey.
You take the opportunities as they come to you, but you're not out there beating the drum. Yeah.
But for me, I mean, especially like the media and stuff, it's more so that I can still have the memories live on of the comrades, or the ones that were there that day that didn't make it home. I mean, it's not about me and not about, how I survived. I think we've all heard that before. We've lived through it, and for me, I'm like everybody else. I don't want to keep
Yeah.
hashing it every time I'm on the news, or so it's for me, it's just kind of honoring and keeping their memories alive for their families.
I think that's all you can do in the
Yeah.
absence of them being
Yeah.
there themselves.
Yeah. And I think it's important, but going back to what we were saying, it's important that we tell the true stories, and not fabricate their lives, because one, they wouldn't want that, but
Well, two, the stories can stand on their own 2 feet. They don't need.
agreed.
Yeah, they don't need the.
No.
I don't know, whatever you call it, the firework displayer that with a
No.
bow that the military wants to wrap on it sometimes.
No, I agree completely.
Well, let's end it there. I won't take up any more of your time.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for responding to the stalker. Hey, this is who I am. I want to sit down. We're like, great. It's another one. Put him in the
Great,
stalker
another
folder.
one.
No, I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Honestly, for me, it's super cathartic to sit down and talk to you about that.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work my way through what I used to do and what it is I'm going to be doing, but it's incredibly beneficial for me to be able, and plus to be able to come at the same story from two different angles. Like
No, I think that was really neat.
Yeah.
And I will send you some of those other stories that I've gotten along the way, and it's just kind of neat that how, like you said, though, it's all so different, but
Yep.
they're all connected in some
Yeah.
way. I mean, at some point, some way that they're all connected. Talking about hitting the mic, and I just hit that.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll turn her off. Thank
All
you
right.
very much. That is all I have for this week, everybody. That's it. 2 hours, I think, is long enough, even though I probably could have talked to her for 2 more hours. What is new in the cleared hot world? The Be the Example Black Ops shirt is out. It's for sale. It is not out of stock. It's getting close to that, but it's not yet. So if you want one of those, grab them. And for the people who have bought those, thank you very much. I can't thank the people enough for the support of the podcast. It is actually mind-blowing, the community of people that have gotten behind it, and it definitely motivates me to keep going and keep putting out the content. In all honesty, I find it to be refreshing to sit down and work my way through my own thoughts, and especially when I get to sit down and talk to people that I find are interesting and intriguing. And there's I wouldn't say it's a long list, but there's a pretty good list of those coming up in the near future. I'm going to be banging out some podcasts here, kind of lining them up. So hopefully everybody listening enjoys them as well. I'm trying to think what else. Go on iTunes and rate the podcast. Click the star button, whatever star you might want. If it's a 1 in your mind, do me a favor and put down 1. If it's a 5, put down a 5. But if it's a 1, do me one more solid, and that is write down what it is you don't like about it. So maybe it's something I can correct. Maybe you don't like the sound of my voice, which in that case, there's nothing I can do about it. So perhaps this just isn't the podcast for you. But if it's something else that I could change, I definitely will take a look at it. And I think that's about it. Tell somebody about the podcast if you like it. Help me spread the word. Take pictures of the stuff that you guys are all buying and gals and send them back to me. And